All right, folks, we're going to talk about mouths today. Let's first talk about some things that all mouths have in common for the most part. You may look in the mirror and go, mine doesn't do that, and that's kind of cool. We're all a little bit different. We're all unique. That's what makes us unique. I mean, that's a good thing. But there are some things we can talk about that we all have in common, starting with the fact that most of us have a little bit of a dip above our upper lip here. For some, it's more pronounced. It might be more of a V, or for some of you, it's very subtle, or maybe even it's even flat. For others, maybe you don't have that. Another thing most of us have is a little bit of highlight on the lower lip. If you look into the mirror, especially if you're a lady and you've got some lip gloss or lipstick on, there's probably a little shine on your lower lip. And that happens because when you have a sun shining down, well, your upper lip generally is kind of like a shelf that doesn't get much light, but your lower lip will catch light. So that's one thing we have in common. Most people, their upper lip is a little bit smaller than the lower lip, but not everyone. Let's look at some other examples here. Sometimes you have one like this, where the upper lip is, just more plump. But in general, upper lip a little bit smaller, lower lip a little bit larger, but not always. Most all of us have this crease between our mouths. Well, we all do, but that's a line you can make that's fairly dark. We'll talk about that in a minute, but a nice dark black line that separates the upper and lower lip. Texture is another thing we all have. Well, not everyone. Generally, when you're really young, you're like a baby, your lips are really soft and there's not much texture. The older you get, the more texture and lines you get in your lips. The older you get, the more wrinkly you get. The more you've used your mouth, so you're going to get a little bit more texture. But there are lines in your mouth, and those are important to have. The rest we'll kind of pick up as we go along here. So today I am going to show you how to draw a couple different types of mouths. We'll draw one that's just closed and basic and boring, and another one maybe with some teeth and some gums, maybe a tongue, so we can look at some different parts of the mouth. Mouths are pretty expressive, as you can see with this slide here. Unlike ears, which don't really communicate much or show us much emotion, mouths can smile and frown, and you can bite your lip in frustration, kind of like this. You can snarl, you can snicker and sneer, and they just are very expressive, so they're kind of important. All right, so we're going to draw one kind of like this one here, if you've got this packet in front of you, just a basic mouth. And I'm going to start with this part right here, the upper part of the upper lip. Here we go. So just draw yourself lightly, that's the word for the day, a light little curve indicating the top of the upper lip. And then I'm going to just curve this part down, just roll it down, kind of like an S that's been elongated. And I'll do the same on the other side. One of the difficulties with drawing mouths is trying to make them symmetrical, making them the same on both sides. You can see sometimes I take more than one line to figure out where mine goes. I like to, when I draw, I carve things into being. I don't know if any of you draw that way, but I usually sometimes take 3, 4, or 5 lines and then erase the ones I don't want. So I just carve it. Often in the corners of the mouth here, you have a little bit of shading. There's some muscles that will pull. So just lightly, with light pressure, maybe just put a little bit of value in there. Now I'm making mine a bit darker so that you can obviously see it. But at the end of the day, we don't want outlines. Lips are not outlined. I know some ladies use lip liner and outline their lips, and that's fine. But for the most part, it's just a change in pigment and value, from your upper lip to your lips themselves. All right, let's make the crease of the mouth. That's where the two lips meet. So usually, there's something that is a little bit curved here that kind of echoes this lip. And for some it's more, pronounced. It might come out further. But just make a curve there. I'll eliminate my initial line and carve this. And then I'm going to curve this over and just let it meet in the corners of the mouth here. A nice little curve. I was always jealous of those artists that could just do it in one line. They just got it right the first time. But I usually take it in a few and then figure out which lines to keep. So it kind of looks like the silhouette of a bird right now, but that is supposed to be an upper lip. And now I'll make the lower lip. Again, I usually look at this distance from top to bottom, and I go a little bit further down. I generally make the lower lip a little bit lower. Well, maybe not that low, unless you've got big, voluptuous, pouty lips. And this I'm just going to make just a big curve. And as I get closer to the corner of the mouth, I'll curve up a little quicker. And I don't go right to the corner. I actually let my upper lip go over my lower lip. That's one little thing I do. But yours may look different. I mean, at the end of the day, they kind of meet in the corner. But again, if yours looks a little bit funky, I would question, is it symmetrical? Did you try to get it the same on both sides? Your lips, your mouth right now probably looks a little different than mine, and that's good. As long as you've got something that looks somewhat like that, you'll be in good shape. Alright, I'm going to start to shade in the lips. And if you've got a wood pencil, you're in much better shape because you can just expose a lot more of this graphite. Instead of using a point, you can quickly shade this in. And I'm trying to eliminate that upper line. So I'm shading right up to the line in hopes of making it just sort of disappear. But if I still see it when I'm done here, then I'll just erase it away. But I want to stress, we do not want an outline there. And if you just make it all one even value, that's a good way to start. But of course, making anything just one solid value is going to make it look flat. And I'll show you in just a second how to make that look a little bit more three-dimensional. One thing I always think about is a couple cylinders, stacked on top of each other. It's really what, a pair of lips are. So think maybe two pop cans that are just stacked on top of one another like this. And you'd have a little bit of light up here, but really this would get dark fairly quick. And then it would be really dark in where they meet. And then this would pop out, and you'd catch some light there, and then this would get dark again. So that's how I want you to think about this. So the first thing I'm going to do is just make this a little darker right in this area, right where the crease is. And by the way, you can make this line really as dark as you want. You can press hard. But on top of that, I'm going to press hard, but then slowly lighten my pressure as I work toward the top of the lip. I don't want an abrupt change in value. I don't want to see dark and then light really quick. So I'm adjusting my pressure, shading hard, then shading soft. But just trying to add a little more value so that this looks a little bit more 3D, more like a cylinder than a 2D flat shape. So just that little touch there can make it feel like, yeah, it's kind of turning. It's kind of going into that cave, that mouth. Another little trick is to do that in the corners of the mouth. The lip actually generally rolls over a little bit more here in the corners. It just turns a little bit faster, if you know what I mean. And so I like to make those a little bit darker, subtly, you know. We shouldn't see a quick change in value, but slowly, like a little mini value scale, it'll get darker in the corners. And that little added touch can really sell the realism, the volume of these lips. All right, let's tackle this lower lip. Again, we're going to make it dark near the top and bottom, but the lower lip, like I said a moment ago, it catches some highlights. Now you could do like we did when we drew the eye, and you could isolate some highlights and shade around them, but you know, shading around stuff, I find that tough. So I'm going to just shade the whole thing, and then I'll use my eraser to pull out those highlights. I just find that easier. So again, just give it a quick overall shading, trying to eliminate the outline. And again, these wood pencils, I can't underscore how much quicker you can move. A lot more like the pastels we used with landscapes. You can just block in an area of value really quick. So all you mechanical pencil users out there, try to get a hand. I mean, those are great. It'll be really great for our perspective drawings, but they can slow you down just having a pencil point. So again, try to avoid an outline. And I'll just go ahead and throw a highlight in here. It might be kind of broken up. It might be more solid. I'm just going to do something like that. And sometimes you see them in the upper lip too. But generally that upper lip's a little bit darker. Alright, I'm going to do the same thing I did with the upper lip, making it dark by the crease of the mouth, and then slowly fade that out a little bit, just making it a little darker in this area. Also a little darker near the bottom. Not an outline, but just a little bit darker to make it look like it's three-dimensional. We might as well do this at this time. I'm going to add a little more shading down here. A lot of these models don't have one. This one does. You can actually make your lip pop forward a bit more by adding some darks. Remember what we talked about Tuesday, that darks will push things back and light areas will pop forward. So not all of you have this, but some of you will look in the mirror and go, yeah, my lip does kind of protrude off my face a bit more, and there's a little bit of shadow there. So if you want, you can add a little bit extra shadow underneath that lip, and it will come forward, and these darks will push it back. Let's get some texture in here. Right now they're a little bit smooth, and maybe some lips out there are that smooth, but generally you have some texture. And this I'd like you to watch first, so you're not going back and forth. Just watch how I change direction with these lines. You know, right in the middle, these lines might be vertical. And by the way, sometimes I make these kind of broken. Let's do a mini version over here. I like to make these lines not just straight, but broken lines. But watch as they change direction and they start to curve. So my lines are going to change direction. This is upper and lower lip. but they're also going to curve. So just watch for a sec. Curving, curving this way, and eventually kind of laying horizontal. Let's do a few more. And you can make them darker if you want to make them more pronounced, or they can just be subtle. And when you look into your mirror, you look at the lines in your lips. Generally, they, are vertical like this, north and south, but you sometimes get some that go horizontal. Sometimes your lips have lots of little lines and texture in there. But this will really sell the realism, that they actually have that texture. So take a minute to put a few texture lines in your lips. And maybe worth spending a minute on this above the upper lip too. We talked on Tuesday when we did noses about this philtrum that happens here underneath the nose. And we talked about using darks to push this back a little bit. And making this lighter over here. But there's another thing I'd like you to consider is that the very top of this upper lip is generally a little bit lighter. That upper lip has a lip. It catches light, so when I shade this, I try to avoid putting too much light in that area. And you don't want to just leave it like a line or anything. Right now this will look a little high contrast, but you'll see if you look into the mirror. Generally it just kind of kicks out a little bit. And let's try to kind of burnish this in and make it not so obvious. So I'll try to just brighten this up a little bit. That might be a little too much. So I'll make it a little more subtle. But consider that when you're shading your lips, that this actually is a little bit lighter in that area for most of us. Again, these are all just generalizations. I'm thinking about the world population and what some things we all have in common. When you look in the mirror, you're going to say, well, my lips aren't quite like that, or my lower lip's smaller, or any number of what-ifs. But hopefully you got a decent pair of lips, a good-looking mouth there. And there's all kinds of muscles and things around the mouth that can really make your mouth more expressive. Let's look at a couple examples here. Because I am going to I'll give you your homework right now. I'd like you to draw 5 mouths. We just did one, and we're going to do one more in a second. But 5 mouths for 50 points. And I want to see one in color, of course. Yes, because I love to torture you. So these are kind of basic, boring mouths, a little bit of expressiveness. But here you can see just how expressive those mouths can be. And really what's happening here is all of these little muscles and things happening around the mouth. That's what's going to make it be more expressive. Here's another. So if you want to challenge yourself, don't just draw the mouth, but the shading around the mouth. That's equally important. Just like eyebrows are to eyes. They are the expressive component that make your eyes really do funny things. So let's do one more, and I'm going to start pretty much the same way. We'll just make another little curve here. We'll make an open mouth this time. And let's turn this up a little bit. We'll make this person smiling. So again, this is the Cupid's bow. I think you can see why they call it a Cupid's bow. Looks like a bow ready to shoot an arrow. It's pretty much the shape of it. Whoa. Try to make it symmetrical, unlike mine. I'm going to take another stab at it and carve it into being. Alright, I'm going to stretch this a little bit more this time because this person's smiling. You may notice I sort of take this in three parts. We've got this curve, and then another curve, and another one here. Should have drawn this larger. Let's just zoom in a little bit. Alright, I'm going to make the lower lip, but it's going to look like the lower lip initially, but really what I'm trying to do is make the open mouth. I've got to start inward a little bit, and I'm just going to bring this down sort of at an angle, and then we'll figure out where that mouth is. It looks like a lip right now, but that's meant to be the opening of the mouth. And you can open it more or less. I'm just going to show you a very basic mouth. We'll put some teeth in here in a second. Alright, I'm going to add that final line for the lower lip. Alright. And now we're going to put some teeth in here. So I'm going to try to make a line that's, well, it depends on the curve. I mean the north-south tilt of the head. Sometimes, where's my mouth? You know, sometimes you've got a little curve this way, or if you're looking up into the mouth, it might be curved this way. Sometimes it's down, sometimes it's straight. I'm just giving this a little bit of a curve. And this is just meant to represent, say, the upper row of teeth. It could be where the teeth meet. I'm just going to do the upper teeth. We'll just make this like a tongue in the bottom. Alright. When you start to draw teeth, be careful not to make dark lines like this. They're going to separate and look like there's gaps in between, the teeth. So make a very thin line where you think the middle is, lightly. I'll never forget doing a tattoo design for a boss of mine. He's like, "Can you do a tattoo of Jane for me?" His new girlfriend. And I did, and I drew the teeth basically almost white, very thin lines in between. But the tattoo artist went like this and outlined all the teeth. Apparently they were new with this. And when you're using a tattoo gun, they're just a little bit thicker. I mean, they looked really bad. It looked like she had chiclets in her teeth, like little pieces of gum. It was really weird. Anyway, he and Jane broke up about a month later, after he had the tattoo on his arm of Jane. And that's the beauty of tattoos. I got paid twice. I got to design a lioness and turned her into a lion, and then he got a cover-up tattoo. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. Let's move on. Let's make the two front teeth. Again, thin lines. Make sure that those teeth look like they're a pair. One's not bigger or smaller than another, or you're going to have some janky-looking teeth. Let's make these next ones curve a little bit more. And let's make these curve and angle a little bit more. And I know, they're all on a line. That's a little unnatural. Unless you're a Viking. I hear they used to file their teeth flat. I know there's some indigenous tribes. I I read about this article in National Geographic where I think you turn 12 or 13 and then you're a man and they file your teeth flat. No Novocaine, no nothing, no thank you. All right, so you've got your teeth kind of on a line, but I like to, again, carve these out. So watch as I kind of, just watch for 1 sec, then this will make sense. I go in here and carve these teeth out. And you have to think about, incisors and canines and molars and bicuspids, and I don't know what you guys know about teeth, but they're all a little bit different shaped, and there are some generalizations there too in the shapes of our teeth. But I'm going in and kind of using the dark, and it's kind of glaring on mine, but it's just meant to be solid black. I'm carving those teeth into being. And again, unless your teeth are a little funky, you're kind of going for symmetrical, same on both sides. And you could do another row of teeth down here at the bottom if you want. Some people smile with their uppers or the lowers, or that's up to you. Or maybe you want to just leave it black. Or leave a tongue. I'll just go ahead and finish these teeth up. But again, careful with those lines in between the teeth. Mine are getting a little too dark here, and you can see that they look like there's big gaps in between. So I'm going to go back and clean those up. Just that my pencil needs to be sharpened. Yeah, here's where mechanical pencil does come in handy. Nice thin lines. Alright, let's talk teeth 101 here. Teeth are not exactly white, and I know we use whitening toothpaste, and we get them bleached, and we get little whitening strips and whatnot, but they're bones. They're bone colored. So, if you want to be realistic about it, you grab that, off-white, that beige, that pastel yellow, and put a little bit of color in. Don't overdo it. You don't want to have butter teeth, but a little bit. When I shade teeth, I do this super lightly, but I actually try to make them look round by putting a little bit of value on the left and right of them. So, because darks push back, and the middle part, the light will come out. But this is kind of like when we do, veins in the eyes. This should be so subtle, you barely see it. But I definitely shade them a bit more here in the corners of the mouth. Here it's going back deeper into the cave, and so I'll use a bit more value. And again, you hear me say this a million times, darks will make things look like they're further back, and lights will come forward. So be careful, don't make them too dark. But, mine look a little funky now. I'll just make them darker back here. But they get darker back there. You could put some gums in your teeth. That would make them a little bit more realistic. Just drop down some like little triangles. Just a medium value, so they kind of read like they're pinkish, reddish, pinkish brown. But that can actually make it look like there's some flesh or meat holding out those teeth in place. And really, look at your gums, study them. Some of you have more or less gums. I've got a relative, I won't mention her name because I'm putting this on YouTube, but really big gums. Yeah, just saying. Gosh, at this point, the lips are just the same. In fact, I'll do it one really quick, but same rules apply. Make it darker in the recesses of the mouth here. Try to eliminate the outlines of the lips. Think a little bit about highlights and texture. Darker near the bottom. So it would just be a repeat lesson of what we just did above to shade all of these in, and I'm not going to waste your time with that. You can shade this in real quick and apply the same rules we just learned a minute ago. And these are just two. I mean, I could sit here and draw all 5 of your mouths, but a lot of this I want you to discover on your own, and maybe you want to try some really expressive mouth. Maybe you want to try a different age, a different gender, a different ethnicity than yourself. I mean, at the end of the day, folks, you have to draw one mouth for your self-portrait, and it can be basic and boring, like the first one. But there's always a little more fun if you make it a little expressive. So go ahead and shade in your second mouth. Give me 5 total, 1 in color. I'll be looking for these on Monday. And I will be around to check on you today to see if you need help. And right now I'm going to put on some mouth music.